recording, and then I'll hit her up to be live. Ready? All right, what's up, bro? Happy Monday. Nice to have you in today. What's going on?
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me. Um, yeah, it's been a good weekend. Spent the time with the father. Father's Day.
Oh, right.
Just
Yeah, I did hear about that.
yeah,
I'm curious about what does your father enjoy doing on Father's Day?
barbecuing,
Okay.
big barbecue,
Okay. Well,
and
he's our both. Both your parents are Brazilian.
oh yeah,
So yeah, he has to barbecue. Okay, and you
yep,
guys do like a churrascaria, like you're cut like that's the thing that I do love, and we actually do this now sometimes for our friends. Is like we grill only one steak at a time, and like cut it, and then hand it
yeah,
out, rather than the traditional American style is cook like 20 steaks and everyone gets their own steak, and then you're just like eating one steak. But I
uh,
love where and when every time we're in Brazil, like they'll cook one thing and another thing's cooking, but they put it into serving sizes and they just go around with a plate and you just it's like appetizers the whole time, but it's like amazing steak. So we've been
yep,
implementing, yeah, implementing that here for our friends as well. Instead of just like, oh, it's barbecue and do everyone gets their own steak. Like we have a bunch of steak, but we're as they're getting done, like cutting it and salting it and bringing it to the table. So
yeah. That's how we do it
okay,
too. That's
yeah.
exactly how we do it. I'm curious. How do your friends like? Do they like it? Do they prefer it like that?
Yeah, once we introduce it to them, they're like, "Oh wow, this is so much nicer." Plus, you don't have to sit with a fork and have a plate and trying to cut steak. Like,
Yeah,
once we introduce, they're like, "Wow, this is so nice," and it just keeps coming because that's how it is in Brazil. Like, you don't because I think that's the problem. We can talk about this all day today, but like here, like whenever the steaks are done, like then you just sit and you eat meat for like 10, 20 minutes and then you're
yeah,
like so full and all this. But I love
yeah.
the barbecue style in Brazil is like it's an all day activity. Like you're just
Oh
constantly
yeah,
cooking and constantly nibbling and eating on little things. It's not just this big. It's the typical American like here's a ton of meat and eat it now and then you're done. So
yeah. No, it's a consistent flow of meat,
yeah,
and it never stops.
yeah. Until you put up
It
the red
never stops.
flag, you're just like, hey, I'm out.
Yeah.
Eu não quero mais. Até logo.
Exactly. Exactly. So
Anyways,
that's kind of what
so
we
what
did
else
today.
does he like to do for Father's Day?
Well, yesterday we usually we go to the beach, right?
Okay.
But where we recently moved to, we don't have that. So we just did a barbecue here, and we just honestly just hung out and just watched movies
Oh,
and
okay. So
just
he
spent time with each other.
relaxes.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Because my
it's.
dad's a truck driver, so he's always traveling.
But I would
So
assume. I just assume that at least this is what I was telling myself yesterday as I was attacking these two like 60-foot Douglas fir trees that are in our backyard. That no Father's Day is for fathers to catch up on the work they've been putting off because your wife watches the kids and it gives you the opportunity to get all these house projects and stuff done. So I would attack this tree. I probably cut down like a small size tree of like I have one of those extender
gotcha.
saw blade things that you can chop. But I had some that were like 8 inch in diameter. These tree branches that I was sawing off. It was nuts. And I got done. I was like, I told my wife, I was like, man, that was a great Father's Day, but like not relaxing at all. And I was
Yeah,
like, do fathers even relax? And she goes, I think all other fathers do. You just love to work. So that's relaxing to you. And I was like,
that's interesting.
oh, that
That's
makes
awesome.
sense. So I thought that's what all other fathers do. So it sounds like your dad's got it set. Like he knows.
Well,
I haven't
here's the
learned
thing.
yet. I don't have enough gray.
Here's the thing. My dad, because my dad's a truck driver, so he spends mostly the weekends here, right? Every other weekend, as soon as he gets home, my mom puts him to work. Like you should see my
Mm.
backyard. There's a huge fence all around my backyard made of wood that my dad made, and he spent all of last weekend up until Sunday doing that.
Okay.
So he earned his rest this weekend.
Okay.
He earned
Maybe
it.
that's where I'm making a mistake. I'm not working hard enough on all the other days to earn my keep.
Yeah.
Oh.
Exactly.
I like that. Okay.
Yep.
Noted. 2023 Father's Day. Watch out. Relaxations coming your way.
Oh my, I can't even imagine that happening
Yeah,
with you.
me neither.
Well,
Anyway,
the man.
so what happened for your weekend then? You said you finished a book, or no?
This
You're still
weekend,
reading the dopamine.
yeah, I'm still listening to it. I started listening to a bunch of podcasts this weekend.
Mm.
My dopamine fast of visual content has been kind of rough. I even texted you. What was it, like Friday night?
Oh yeah,
And I
that
was
you
like,
were so
man,
bored of
I'm
listening to
so
stuff.
freaking bored. I just want to watch something.
Hmm.
Because it's so annoying just not being able to. Um,
Do you find things more stimulating though, that weren't stimulating before?
for sure. Um, I think like now that I spend my little 10 minutes outside in the morning,
Hmm.
it's like it's nice early sunlight, sunlight, and I'm just looking at everything. I'm looking at the
You're
trees,
like a
I'm
kid
looking
in
at
like amazement now.
yeah, I'm like whoa, this is the outside world.
Yeah.
Because I'm from the generation where it's like video games and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Ta 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 ta.
Yeah, exactly. It's like everything's super fast paced.
Yeah.
Um, but it's just like sitting there in the calm. It's just like, whoa, this is cool, you know. So I'm just learning to appreciate things
Mm.
a little bit more and appreciate the stillness. Like I'm still practicing my everyday 10 minutes of just quietness,
Mm.
practicing that. Um, that's probably going to be a habit that I want to continue because it does help a lot.
But I
Um,
think that it only is helping because your baseline's so like it. This is what
maybe.
I've even realized just by told you I was doing this gym thing of not listening to music at all while I'm at the gym, and it's actually making everything slow down so much while I'm at the gym. And I think I was even telling you, like, when today I was doing my bench press and stuff, but because I don't have music stimulating me, like, I'm looking for something else that's stimulating, right? Something that's happening because it's so boring, right? I mean,
Yeah.
but like, so then I'm like watching my arm go up and down and like focusing on the muscle and like seeing it and like it just is, you're looking for some other quote unquote stimulation because you're just sitting there. So
Yeah.
whereas before, instead of like watching my arm, like how cool is that, it was like listening to the beat, and the beat's like, oh, that's stimulating, so that's where your focus goes. So I'm
Yeah.
wondering, back to what I was saying with you, like I wonder if you bring all this stuff back, if doing the 10-minute walk or whatever, going outside, it's probably not going to have the same feel just because your tolerance is going to be so much different that it's like, oh, wow, this isn't.
Probably not. Probably not. It's probably not going to have the same, luster as it is now. And it's a good question because, like, I'm kind of enjoying it, even though there's times where it's like I want to,
Yeah.
just do something. So, um, but for most of my day, I'm kind of enjoying, the focus, the clarity, the feeling of just being present
Mm-hmm.
and not having to worry about um, checking in on stuff. I'm in my own little, world right now, and I like it, especially when it comes to like social media. Before I want to go on, just what's this person doing? Well, what's happening there? Oh, okay, what's happening here?
Which is interesting because I was thinking about all this because that's all I ever do. Um, but that I wonder if it's as much of this dopamine kicks, and this is where actually this week on my to-do list is to see what the half-life, how long dopamine, once it's released, how long it actually stays, how long do we keep feeling it, like how long is it actually, is it just an instant hit and then it's gone, or does it stay, how long does it stay, contingent upon what you're eating and all this other stuff. But I wonder if with all of this, if it's literally, we're labeling this dopamine right now, like, oh, I'm getting the dopamine hit, all that. But I wonder if it's literally just comes up to with the distraction or not, right? Because like normally you don't want to do stuff, so you look for stuff to distract you, like, oh, I'm bored, whatever, entertain me, stimulate me. Like obviously we know it's dopamine, but I think almost at the base, it's like are we just going through our days of trying to find distractions to get out from being bored, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's less of distractions, but more like stimulus. We're little
Mm.
stimulus
I,
junkies.
I think what nomenclature, like we're saying the same thing, just kind of it's just different word. But yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, but I think we're all constantly looking for stimulus, right? And that's
Oh
what
yeah,
in a sense dopamine really is. It's just stimulus, right?
right.
So and that's why I think like the conscious has to come in of like when is this stimulus being received. That's where the balance happens. So like let's say necessarily watching a movie or Instagram or whatever, that stimulus is not necessarily bad if you control when you receive it, right?
And that goes back to, which is perfect. I'm glad you said that, because like that goes back to me of saying that it's a distraction. Like, are you looking to get a hit to be distracted? Like, oh, I know I got to make calls, or I know I got to do my taxes. I know I got to do something that's boring. That's
Mm-hmm.
boring. Let me go get a hit from something else. Let me go look at Instagram. What are we doing? Like,
Yeah.
why are we turning to quote unquote be distracted? Because I remember reading this book, Distraction, was talking about all these ways to set yourself up for success so that you're not distracted. But now it's like, oh, now we're getting into like the chemicals of why we want to be distracted. And it's like you're
Yeah.
saying, like, oh, I'm bored and I just want to hit. Like, I want something that's exciting.
Yeah, I think um especially with this time that we live in, it's so unprecedented because we've never had this amount of distractions available. This amount of stimulus available at all times, right? So it is, I think humans kind of do want that distraction of what's quote unquote boring is growing more and more because there's more and more stimulating things coming out every,
Mm.
you know, like well, right? Because
Oh,
VR is gonna just take over. So if you think about it, can you hear me?
yeah, my internet's getting very unstable. I didn't hear what you were saying about VR.
Oh, I'm just saying, like, if you go down this route where real life is becoming less and less um, stimulating,
Yeah,
and
100%.
the technology, right? It makes real life boring, and eventually you get into the VR stuff,
And that's its job, though. I mean, at the same time,
right?
this is what we want.
Exactly. But at
Wait,
at what
let me,
cost?
yeah, and I was actually just thinking about this the other day of like, okay, you can get stimulus. Like, we're gonna start wanting this constant hit of all this, but like the extreme is like, okay, now it's like essentially like the Matrix. Like, you're just plugged into a machine and you can just be fed, hey, you're feeling great all day, whatever. But again, at what cost? Like,
Yep,
be careful
exactly.
what you want. And I think that that's what you're saying is, yeah, you can want all this stimulus and all this, but know what you're giving up and what's the consequence. To me, it's almost like this dopamine, which it goes back to sugar gives you dopamine too. But like, it's like healthy eating, like dopamine regulation and just what you do on a daily basis is almost like we almost need to be taught the same way we were talking about like calories. Like, yeah, you can go out and have Twinkies, you can have ho-hos, you can have, McDonald's, Burger King, all that, but by doing that, this is the consequence. No different of, okay, now not only do you have to worry about your calories on what you consume, but now we need to worry about how your dopamine and energy stimulation is, affected throughout the day. That, yeah, if you just want tons of stimulus, then you're going to be so bored on other daily things, you won't even be able to go outside and appreciate the birds. And like, is that really what you want?
Yeah, exactly. I think as we grow and get more integrated with technology, that definitely has to be a common conversation and just awareness,
Yeah.
right? Of um, and become a part of the conversation of mental health, because now mental health has become like a big thing, right?
Thanks to
But
COVID,
it
which makes
becomes,
perfect sense. I mean, this bl-
oh yeah,
this makes so much sense to me, and I think we were talking about it before of like the great regression or resignation of people, quitting their jobs. But think like, okay, I'm not at my job. I'm literally on. Working from home, watching YouTube, looking at Instagram. Like you're doing all this stuff, constant stimulation. Like no wonder why you're so bored with anything. Hey, do you want to go hang out with friends? No, like I'm just Netflixing and chilling, and like nothing is exciting anymore because
yeah,
you're so used to so much stimulation from technology that the real world, like whether we call it virtual reality or not, like we're technically living in a virtual reality now of stimulation.
yeah. I think COVID was really a spotlight on that. And then you couple that with extreme isolation.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of people couldn't, like in some states, people couldn't go out, you know. And that's why you see the rise in, I mean, the decline in mental health. I don't think we were meant to have this much stimulation. Definitely not.
Yeah, just like
So,
calories. Like we're not meant to have
oh
it
yeah,
without. And same thing with calories. Yeah, you can have a lot of calories. Like we can have a lot of stimulation, but you have to work for it. It's like okay, calories I can eat. What Michael Phelps would eat like 7,000 calories a day, but this is what he did during the day to make it worth it. So same thing with this stimulation. Yeah, you can work for these stimulants like you're saying, okay, get all your stuff done, do whatever, and then yeah, at night maybe you give yourself a stimulus hit.
yeah, for sure. It has to be followed by that. I think this is the key that we keep hitting. It's just, you know, structure your stimulus, your enjoyment after your work, your struggle, all of that, the friction.
Yeah,
And I
don't
think
just go
that's the
for
conversation to
instant.
be had.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's the conversation to be had. Um, and part of the book that I've been reading, it talks about, the balance of pleasure and pain, and how the way our society is today, it's all about avoiding pain. It's
Yeah.
all about pleasure.
Yeah.
And therefore, just like a muscle, it makes it regress. So our ability to tolerate pain, to tolerate boredom, becomes weaker and weaker and weaker.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, there is no more tolerance. It's just, any little thing, it's freak out.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
that's people in line. Like I remember even doing this myself, like being in checkout lines, reading, scanning, like, oh, this is a boring phone.
yeah,
How do I check out? Because I don't know how to check. Because, like, this is a good example of, like, you just going outside and noticing the birds. Like, people need to be able to do that with being at the checkout line. I'm at the checkout line, I'm bored. Instead of pulling out my phone, let me see what's going on around me. Like, let's be present. Let's notice other people. Let's notice things. So,
yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of the have in the world today, especially like I don't know, just more mental health issues that people you see people treating with a whole bunch of medication, could definitely be mediated by a controlled amount of stimulus,
yeah.
a controlled stimulus, as opposed to, medication that really gets you dependent on it and only makes it worse. Like in the book, it talks about how uh, um, this one girl, she came to the doctor cannabis, and she was using cannabis, she said, for her anxiety. Apparently she had really bad anxiety.
Okay.
And what the doctor told her was to go on a 30-day fast from any sort of cannabis, anything like that. And then she was freaking out. She's like, oh my gosh, my anxiety is going to get so much worse, I don't know how I'm going to handle it. And at the end of the 30-day fast, she actually told the doctor that her anxiety was much less and much more manageable than it was when she was using cannabis for it.
Mm,
Meaning she was using stimulus to deal with a problem that, you know, anxiety and stress, that's normal, that's struggle, that's
right.
things that we're meant to be dealing with in a healthy manner. But she was seeking an outside stimulus to deal with that. once her body became adept to that, it became dependent on it, and therefore the stimulus was the cause of the anxiety, and the anxiety was the cause to use stimulus. So
Wow.
it just became the circle, and once she broke it, that's when she started. Her body became strong enough to deal with that struggle type of thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's very interesting because we're living in a world where we're depending on so much stimulus to help us, get through our days, get through our struggles. Um,
Yeah. We'll deal with
and
boredom, I think is what it is. Because we
exactly,
don't know
exactly.
what the consequence, what this is having on our other parts of our life.
Yeah, for
Like, because
sure.
I even know, like, even like sitting with your kids. Like, I coach people that like have a hard time making time for their kids, and even talking to them, they're like, well, it's boring and all this. And it's like, it's not. But if you're so used to stimulation and watching action movies or seeing a scroll on Instagram or gambling, like all these things, yeah, watching kids play is pretty boring. But once
Yeah,
you've adjust yourself and you can find a way of like, wow, this is actually entertaining, and all these other parts that um, I I think that's, yeah, a huge part of what we need to work on. But
for sure.
um, I also want to mention, I don't know if you saw or listened to that video I sent you, and this is my once I kind of figure out more about dopamine, I really want to go into more about serotonin,
Okay.
because they were one of these guys was saying that dopamine is not really good, because anything that leads to addiction is obviously not beneficial for us, right? Like, I mean,
Mm.
drugs, you get a ton of dopamine, and now because of that, you're fixated on wanting more because it feels good. So you're stuck on this feeling of always wanting more. So his
Mm-hmm.
thing, his kind of baseline was that dopamine isn't really what we should all be seeking, which I think we agree. Like, we don't have tons of dopamine. But his was dopamine is tied to substances and like things, whereas serotonin is the feel good hormone. I think it's a hormone. So don't get mad if I'm not saying that's correct, if it's a hormone or neurotransmitter or what. But anyway, his thing was, instead of chasing more dopamine or whatever, serotonin is the feeling of happiness. Like, it's like ethereal, it's like
Okay.
you connecting to God or the higher being, of like, it's when you actually are quote unquote happy. It's happiness, not just a feeling.
Interesting.
So he was saying,
Okay.
and I think that um one interacts with the other. Like, I think if your dopamine is high, your serotonin's low, and if your serotonin, I think that they're inversely
Okay.
proportional. But I'm not sure. I haven't went down that rabbit hole yet. But it was interesting because his old thing was serotonin is for happiness. So that's what we should really be chasing. But I think,
Interesting.
which this kind of makes sense on this whole being, because you're saying doing boring things, being outside looking at the sun, being around birds, or being in nature. I bet your dopamine is so low at that point.
Yeah, my baseline is definitely lower,
Yeah, so I
for sure.
wonder if, because, and I'm pretty sure, I'll have to double check, but I think they're inversely. So if your dopamine is low, I would imagine your serotonin is a little higher at that moment. So, and I don't know if at that moment you're like, wow, I'm happy. But when your dopamine is high, which this is totally, now I'm talking this out. Like, when I'm at the gym and I'm like jacked and like, intense, and the music's going and I'm feeling a pump, I'm guaranteed my dopamine's really high at that point. Overstimulated. Da, da. At that moment, do you feel happy? If you When you're at that moment, are you like, whoa, this is the best thing ever? Like, I'm so happy right now. Like, mine is more of
No.
like, whoa, I'm unstoppable. I can do all these things.
Yeah, I feel motivated.
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah, that you can do stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's an intense, and I think part of that is also because dopamine is one of the building blockers for epinephrine and
Yeah.
norepinephrine, which is adrenaline.
Hmm.
So they kind of go hand in hand in that, right? So yeah, I mean, definitely not at the gym. I'm definitely not like giddy happy.
Yeah.
I'm like dun 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 rock music.
Yeah.
Lifting weights.
Christian
I'm a
rock, I'm sure.
badass. Of course, of course. I'm a badass. I'm gonna, take over everything.
Yeah.
Ah. Um. So it's definitely not the same as, just sitting outside
Yeah.
and enjoying nature or spending time with my family or things like that.
But I
But
just want to say this, that I think that if people are trying to find happiness and be content with their life and all this, and this might explain a lot for me of what like, I wanted more dopamine. I wanted the high. Like, I wanted to achieve more. I wanted more motivation to do stuff, which makes sense if this is the case of the serotonin dopamine. Like, it's so hard to be happy if you're always being so motivated and being push, 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 push. Like, can you actually
yeah.
sit and see birds outside and be like, wow, I'm happy?
Hmm.
I don't think that you'd be able to do that. And I've noticed when I go on my meditation retreats or whatever, where I'm gone for like 4 days, like, there's no stimulation. So I'm sure my dopamine's so low. And I'm sure that's why probably my serotonin's so high of like, wow, I'm so happy. Like, I'm so peaceful. I'm so calm.
Yeah. I think the whole thing is just about, first of all, it's almost like you have like superpowers, right? Of these superpowers of like feeling of drive, motivation, and strength, and also the one of just peace,
Mm-hmm.
happiness, enjoyment. And I think it's like knowing when to activate
A
which.
100%. And what's the cost and benefit of each one? No different than like
Of
calories,
course.
right? With calories, some are fat, some are carbs, some are protein, and what's the consequence of one or the other? I don't know if you caught that because I think my internet is going out again.
No, I caught that. I caught that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Place where it's like, for example, let's say you this weekend cutting down that tree, right? One could argue that while you're doing that, that's more dopamine drive,
Yeah.
right? That's You're doing something
Oh, it
physically.
definitely
Oh my God, let's
was.
cut down this tree,
My arms were on fire,
right?
and I was channeling my inner David Hoggins. I was like, embrace the pain, keep going, don't take a
Yeah,
break. You're going to get through this. No break until you get all the way through.
exactly. And then after you see the good job that you've done, you can take a step back, look at it.
Mm.
Maybe you have your family with you, and you're just like, wow, look what I did.
Come
Just a
marvel at
smile.
my
It's just like, wow,
destruction.
that's more of the serotonin.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Um, so I think, yeah, there definitely is a place for that, because if you think about it, in an intense moment, like maybe lifting or a fight or whatever, that you want that dopamine.
You
You
want that
definitely don't want to
motivation to move.
activate
Yeah.
this. Yeah, you don't want the serotonin at that point. Like I wouldn't want serotonin at the gym.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh no, I've been trying with that. It definitely makes my workout way less intense. It's way harder to lift the weight. But to me, I'm sacrificing physical strength to work on mental strength, is what I like about it. Like, I'm not going to get
for
as
sure.
big, I'm not going to get as good at results, but I can see for sure that it's building mental strength of being okay with stillness and knowing that, like, back to what you're talking about, the girl with cannabis, like, I think that's so true of us thinking that we need this stimulus to do stuff for us. Like, we're giving up our control, saying that we don't have the superpower. Cannabis has the superpower. When I do cannabis or whatever, then that's what calms me. I don't have the ability to calm myself. So I think with her getting rid of it for 30 days, that she is realizing that she actually has the power, not the cannabis itself, to calm her anxiety and all this stuff. And I think that's, like you're
Interesting.
saying, is once we can realize we have the superpower inside us to do certain things, like, then that's when you're unstoppable. So, like at the gym, for example, like, I don't have any stimulant. I'm not having any caffeine, no coffee in the morning. Today I went to the gym first thing 5 in the morning get to the gym and start lifting the weight. I'm like, wow, this is heavy. And then I get done. And then I do my 1 minute of like kind of meditation, just breathing in for 4, out for 4, with my eyes closed for a minute till my watch beeps. And then I know, Creighton, it's on you to get stimulated to lift this effing weight. There's no music. There's no caffeine coming, brother. This is you. And so then I'm like, okay, let's go, let's go, let's go. And then I get in it. And then I can see and feel and sense the movement. And then after I'm done, okay, now it's on you. Got to calm yourself down. Like it's just this constant back and forth. It's really interesting. Because as soon as I'm done, I'm like, okay, like I'm breathing heavy. I'm like, all right, let's calm our breath. And then my mind's wandering and like listening to other people. I'm like, no, get it here, get it centered. And so like I'm trying to recenter myself in that minute. And then it vibrates. Okay, now it's time to get jacked up again. And then,
Yeah.
so anyway,
Yeah. It's really empowering when you know that you're in control.
100%. Yeah, yeah. Well,
Because
I mean, how
that
depending on how religious you are. I mean, I don't know if we are in control, but I think we have the power within us to think that we can control certain things. So, yes,
sure for sure.
asterisk.
I think it's like well, you know where they talk about the only thing you can't control is how you react to things,
100%.
right?
And your
So like
decisions. And your
and your
decisions. So, yeah.
and your decisions, right? So and I think that goes hand in hand with like once you learn that not only serotonin but dopamine, but and those are more I think on the positive side, but what about cortisol?
Yeah.
That's more of the fear, that's that negative, that's that stopping power, not the go power,
Yeah.
right? Once you learn you can control even that, through breathing, through motion, through things like that. um, you begin to really understand it's like I can control my state, right?
Yeah.
And therefore I can adapt to whatever situation I need it to be
Mm-hmm.
in, right? Whatever situation that serves me in the moment. Um, and obviously all within knowing you have a balance. Because I think for sure, if you have an excess of dopamine, if you're only pursuing dopamine, if your balance might tip over,
Mm-hmm.
right? But on the inverse, if it's too much serotonin, like yeah, you might be happy and but probably won't get anything done either,
Yeah.
right?
And if
So
that's
it's
what
like
you want to do, then that's your prerogative. Yeah, 100%.
exactly, right? And so I think there's a healthy middle ground for all of it, and knowing that one, you're in control, and two is that all of them serve you in a way. You know what I mean? You don't have to alienate them. It's just
100%.
they're they're inside you, right? They're inside you for a reason. It's just knowing when to activate that power.
Yeah, I
Um,
love that. And that's so spot on. Of there's nothing wrong with us. It's all just chemicals and stuff and knowing, how and when things are happening so that you can gain that control back.
exactly, exactly. Like I know that when I feel too stressed or anxious, that me taking 10 minutes to just lay down and not do anything will lower my baseline levels and prepare me to receive more stimulus.
Yeah.
So I know that it's like, oh, it's not actually that I'm super anxious or afraid, it's just I might just have too much stimulus right now. Let me
Yeah.
cut it a little bit for a second and then get back into it, you know what I mean? um so it becomes, yeah, less of just a meaning type of situation where it's like, oh my gosh, God, why is this happening to me?
Right.
What's wrong?
Where you don't think you're
It's
in
just like
control, that you're like,
just
oh, it's these other things. They're responsible, whatever. I can't do anything
yeah,
about it. Yeah, 100%. I love that.
exactly. And yeah, so it's all about balance of pleasure and pain, and everything else. And I mean, speaking of pain, you just finished the Living with a Seal book, right? And I'm sure in the book it highlights all the types of discomfort that he makes him go through,
Right.
right? So, talk a little bit about that experience. What'd you think of it? What'd you kind of learn from it?
Well, I've trying to do a hybrid between the two of, yeah, embrace the pain, but also control your mind and find happiness at the same time.
Yeah,
So, because I can see, because my old tendency is definitely like seal, like of just endure and just push and blah blah blah, and do hard things always because that's what hard people do, and doing that for
Yeah.
so long. But like, then if you're always just looking for that dopamine high, I think you're depleting yourself of the happiness. And you can only do that for so long or for so many years before you're kind of depleted, and now you're stuck having things, but you don't have a feeling of happiness. So,
Interesting.
but I did love all of it, and that's why I was like, okay, I'm gonna do hard things, and hard things go to the gym without stimulation, rather than, well, doing hard things is doing more weight or doing it harder. It's like I want to
Mhm.
apply that of doing hard things on doing things that are uncomfortable for my mind, like mind challenges,
Yeah.
rather than just, oh, I'm gonna endure tons of physical pain. Like I want to
Yeah. Yeah.
endure mindfulness uncomfortableness, like, is really what it is. I want to see how to be uncomfortable in my feelings and in my emotions and be okay with that. Like, Jocko's is like good. Like I want that
Yeah.
for uncomfortableness, not just physical pain, but like emotional and like mental stuff. So that's what
Yeah.
I
I think
really want
when
to explore.
that's very interesting. I think when you end up going to that place where it's like, sure, there's a certain amount of outside struggle, right? But then at the same time, you don't have any mental stimulus or mental distractions to pull you away from that,
Yeah,
right? Because to
we'll set
me,
yourself
the
up for
music,
success.
exactly, right? The music, for example, during a workout, that's my me avoiding the mental side of that physical struggle,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Whereas if I'm, and this is why even David Goggins talks about where he works out with no music, no nothing.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he does that. He says because he says when I'm gonna have to sometimes tap into that power, I won't always have music there to put me through to that place.
Yeah, wow.
You know what I mean?
I'm coming
Um,
for you, David. Let's go.
yeah.
Just
And
kidding.
I
I'm
think
not.
it's
I'm
like
not. I don't want no trouble.
he'll come for you.
Yeah.
Um, but I think when you go to that kind of place and you're not running or distracting yourself from the discomfort,
Mm.
you go to that kind of like, because I noticed like the couple of days last week that I did it without any music or without anything, I noticed even some negative conversations coming in my head,
Mm.
which was interesting. It's like, and I didn't have, I purposely left my headphones and everything in my car. I didn't have anything. I'm like, I'm here, right? I'm trapped in this, like willingly trapped in this discomfort, right? And I noticed the mental discomfort coming in, and it's like those negative conversations that maybe I would have avoided with positive
Oh yeah.
upbeat
Running
music.
away. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, oh, I'm locked in here with the darkness now. Let's
Mm-hmm.
see what's going on,
Yeah.
right? And then you can start exploring and seeing what's that darkness in your mind,
Yep.
which is a very interesting experience.
Yeah, and that's
Did you go through any
embracing
of
the
that?
bad stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Like while you're working out, did you go through any of that? Like
No, my
mental.
mind's pretty quiet now because I deal with so much of that stuff on a daily basis. Like,
Mm,
so I've done so much deep work of getting a lot of those demons out. So
yeah.
I don't have it as much. Like, I'll have certain days, but yeah, I haven't noticed it as much in my workouts yet. So,
Interesting. Interesting.
um, let's cut it off here though, because I do need to run to another thing. So,
No worries. You're good.
awesome, bro. I appreciate you. I hope you have an amazing week, and I will talk to you soon. I'm assuming you said something amazing,
You
but
too, brother.
all right,
For sure. Sounds good.
later.
I did.